Thank you for joining us for our Mississauga update. I want to start off by briefly addressing growing concerns as Ontario enters a sixth wave of COVID-19. I know people are tired of COVID and want to move on, but the unfortunate reality is that cases are once again on the rise. I've spoken with Dr. Lowe, and we have seen a modest increase in transmission here in Peel, which was expected as we transitioned into a full reopening with most public health measures lifted. Dr. Lowe has told me, however, that Peel is continuing to experience the lowest rates of transmission in the province, and we are not seeing transmission rise to the same extent that other jurisdictions in Ontario are. And that's because, as you know, Peel was one of the hardest hit areas of the country in previous waves. We have a reduced susceptibility thanks to the immunity developed from those waves, built on our very high rates of vaccination. Other jurisdictions in Ontario are currently experiencing spikes as they were previously not as impacted and thus have more susceptible populations. But that's not to say we should let our guard down, not right now. Dr. Lowe and Peel Public Health are continuing to monitor our trends. In the meantime, I encourage residents to continue masking indoors as circumstances warrant. For example, if you or someone you're with is at a higher risk of developing a severe case of COVID, is immunocompromised, or if you're simply not comfortable without a mask. Also, please stay home if you're sick with any COVID symptoms. What gives me great hope is that 94% of residents 12+ in Peel have at least 2 doses of the vaccine. Also, as of this morning, residents 60+ can book their second booster if it's been at least 3, but preferably 5 months since their last shot. I encourage everyone to get their second booster as soon as they are eligible. Keep your defenses high and limit the severity of this virus. Minister Elliott has said that the province is watching cases closely as well, and that right now there isn't a need to bring back any additional public health measures. And now I'd like to talk about the housing affordability crisis that's sweeping the province, as I know it's top of mind for so many people. Last night, we held a great information session with hundreds of residents to share how the City of Mississauga is addressing housing affordability. We also discussed new housing legislation that the province brought forward last week and the numerous recommendations that have been made by its Housing Affordability Task Force. Recommendations that the province has clearly said will be their long-term roadmap to address the crisis. I first want to thank Premier Ford and Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Steve Clark, for their commitment to making housing more affordable for all Ontarians and for committing to work with cities to find solutions. I was happy to see measures in the legislation that, for example, increase the foreign buyers tax from 15% to 20%, and increases in fines and other penalties for unethical behavior by developers. I am, however, deeply concerned that this approach wrongly places the housing crisis squarely at the feet of municipalities. Specifically, that we are the ones slowing down the approval process for new developments and thus limiting the ability for developers to increase supply. This simply could not be further from the truth here in Mississauga. In Mississauga, we do not have an issue with supply. We have approved zoning for over 20,000 units where construction could start immediately if the development community wanted it to. And in our downtown, we have allowed unlimited heights and densities and have pre-zoned over 40,000 units. Why are they all not built yet? Well, that's a good question, but it's a question for the development industry. The work we've done has made it incredibly easy for developers to build, but it has not increased the affordability of housing at all. As a city, we are not slowing down development. In fact, we are meeting development application approval timelines 95% of the time, which is pretty incredible. We are doing our part in moving applications along and have supply available. We just need builders to get shovels in the ground. Now, I can't deny that Mississauga, like many other GTA municipalities, were originally designed as bedroom communities where people could easily commute to the big city while living in a large, detached four-bedroom home. I'll admit, we are not immune to NIMBYism here in Mississauga either. But we can't deny that Mississauga is growing and changing, and I think that the work we are doing here as a city reflects that shift. We are taking steps to bring more housing into these neighborhoods through what is called gentle intensification by allowing townhomes, stacked townhomes, duplexes in residential communities, and by exploring laneway houses, garden suites, and garage conversions. We have a plan to welcome growth and density to our city in a way that will see more housing built in Mississauga and in the places where it makes sense. In our downtown core, the waterfront, and around our major transit areas, as well as in existing neighborhoods where it can be properly accommodated. Our plans will accommodate for around 156,000 units in the next 30 years in these areas alone. And construction in our city is currently at an all-time 30-year high. I know that as our population continues to grow, we'll have to embrace more intensification in our older neighborhoods. But cities and our residents do need to have a say, and our plans for growth must be respected. As cities, we need to factor in a host of issues when approving developments, including schools and sewer capacity, groundwater displacement, and wind shear mitigations, things we've already considered in the areas we've planned for growth. A one-size-fits-all approach that's being recommended by the task force is not the answer and threatens our ability to build the complete communities, the safe neighborhoods that everyone deserves. There's always room for us to make improvements and changes, but cities are only one actor. To suggest that we are the root of the problem and supply is simply not correct. Our numbers clearly show this. The provincial and the federal governments, the development industry, and financial institutions all play a critical role in tackling this crisis. We need to act together. It's time for a much more nuanced approach that factors in the roles that we all have to play. I understand that the federal government will also announce a historic $10 billion announcement to address the housing affordability crisis in today's federal budget. Of course, I welcome this investment and many of the measures that have been reported in the media, including banning foreign home buyers for 2 years and making it easier for first-time home buyers to get into the market. I look forward to seeing more details later this afternoon. Mississauga is ready to partner with the federal and the provincial governments to find more solutions to this problem, while continuing to move forward on our existing plans that is making it incredibly easy for developers to build in our city and increase supply. Before I take questions from the media, I want to extend my warmest wishes to members of Mississauga's Muslim communities as they continue the month-long spiritual journey of Ramadan. I've always had a deep admiration for the sacrifices and commitment people make during the month of Ramadan, and I send strength and focus to all of those who are fasting. Mississauga is a world-class city, home to residents from so many different cultural backgrounds and faiths, and our Muslim communities are some of our most dynamic, active, and engaged. You have truly made our city a far better place because of your commitment to living in harmony with others and supporting those most in need across our city. I once again offer my best wishes for a blessed month of fasting and reflection. Ramadan Mubarak, Ramadan Kareem, and now I'm prepared to take questions from the media.
Your first question, Mayor Crombie, comes from Steve Cornwell at the Mississauga News. Go ahead, Steve.
Mayor Crombie, how are you?
Very well, thank you, Steve.
That's good. It's been a few weeks since Mississauga Council repealed the city's mask bylaw, and as you've noted, while it might be slightly less in Peel, there is some escalation of COVID levels seen in wastewater, which provides, of course, an indication of how pervasive the virus is in the region. Are you concerned at all that we're heading back into the middle or of a bad situation again with the pandemic? And are you considering reinstating the mandatory face mask rules in the city?
Well, first, let me say that yes, I am concerned. I see that our rates are escalating, and they're equal to the height of Omicron right now. And we see that primarily in the indicator that you mentioned, the wastewater, as there is not as much PCR testing being done as had been done previously. But I'm in constant contact with Dr. Lowe, and he does not see a need to introduce further measures at this time, and we know that the provincial government is also monitoring the situation very closely. And I know that should there be a need to move forward with restrictions, that they would be the first to do so, because, as you would know, that it would make more sense to implement measures right across the province rather than solely in one jurisdiction, in one municipality. I know everyone is watching all the health measures very, very closely.
Follow-up, Steve?
Thank you for that. Yes. Well, I would just wonder at that point, I mean, what would be the harm, say, in taking a more cautious approach right now? You see lots of public health or epidemiologists publicly kind of calling for at least masks to come back just to help contain the virus as it is now. So what would be the harm in kind of using your office to help promote something that many people are saying would create a measure of safety in a bit of an uncertain time?
Well, in fact, I do agree that if people feel unsafe, they should wear their mask, and I've simply been advocating that from the beginning. In fact, I wanted to take a slower approach to lifting restrictions myself. So I just continue to advocate that if you feel unsafe and you're in a crowded context, whether it's indoors or outdoors, please wear your mask. Many people continue to do so, and I'll be in constant touch with Dr. Lowe, and I know that if he feels the time is right, he will make some pronouncements himself. Of course, I take advice from our public health officials, and he believes at this time he's monitoring the conditions, but feels the safety precautions are adequate, and people need to take those precautions themselves, and of course, I encourage them to do so.
Your next question comes from Declan Finnegan at Mississauga. Go ahead, Declan.
Good morning, Mayor Crombie. How are you?
Good morning. I'm very well, thank you.
That's good. Just curious, I know Ward 6 Councillor Ron Starr participated in the City Council meeting yesterday, while I guess supposedly he was on a leave of absence while the Integrity Commissioner's investigation is ongoing. Now, I know the councillor has every right to participate as he's, as he would like. But what is your reaction to that, to his participation? And when is the Integrity Commissioner's report due to come before council?
It's a good question, Declan, and I was not aware that Councillor Starr was going to join the council meeting yesterday. I was quite surprised. And I'll say I was quite disappointed. We asked Councillor Starr to take a leave of absence until the Integrity Commissioner filed his report to council, which will be a public report. And that report is due at the next council meeting, so in 2 Wednesdays. I was a little surprised, I will say, and disappointed. But as you know, we have no ability to require Councillor Starr to not participate in meetings. He is still a sitting elected official, and he can participate if he chooses. However, I did send him a letter and I made it very clear our position at council asking him to take the leave, which we thought was appropriate. Thank you.
Follow-up, Declan?
Yes, thank you. Just switching gears, I know for decades, the downtown core of Mississauga has been known as the city center. Is there a move, Mayor Crombie, either unofficially or officially, to rebrand or rename it as downtown Mississauga moving forward?
Well, you know, we refer to it as downtown in the Exchange District, and we certainly have an uptown, which is Eglinton in here, Ontario. So certainly so much activity in the downtown, as you know. And of course, we're still lobbying for the LRT to loop around the downtown. We have 25 towers coming in the next 5 years. And of course, with the OMERS Oxford development, there'll be another tower each year for 30 years after that. As I said in my presentation, 156,000 units coming in, many of them in the downtown where there are unrestricted heights and densities, and we look forward to animating our downtown with cafes and boutiques and art galleries, etc. And I see that in our future, in our beautiful downtown.
That was your last question for the day, Mayor Crombie.
Thank you for joining us today.